I've been using this Galaxy S22 Ultra for a few days now, and here are my initial thoughts on this device. And the first thing I want to say is that this is a very heavy phone. At 226 grams, this phone feels very different compared to the S10 Plus I've been using for the past 2 years. It's not a big deal for me, it's just that I need to get used to the denseness of this phone. And on the same line, the curved radius of the side aluminum frame is a very nice design trait. This makes holding the phone much more comfortable despite its hefty weight and large dimensions. But despite that, I've actually been using this phone with a case, mainly for two reasons. The first is that I'm not mentally prepared to use this phone without a case, especially given that I've watched a drop test video of this phone, and let's just say that the protruded camera lens on the back here is not built for impact. The second being that without a phone case, I physically can't use this when it's sitting flat on a desk. The left-lying camera bar means that it doesn't sit flat on the desk, and if I were to use it like my S10 Plus, it will wobble and sound like this, which is really annoying. And since this phone is fairly heavy, holding it up and using the S Pen to write notes or draw for long periods of time isn't feasible and sounds really tiring for me. So having a case allows me to put the S Pen or put the phone on the desk and to use the S Pen while on the desk. With this Spigen case that I have here, the camera bump goes away and I can now happily use it flat on the desk, albeit the entire package is now even heavier at a little over 280 grams. And speaking of the S Pen, there's two things I like about the S Pen on the S22 Ultra. As a lefty myself, I really like the positioning of the S Pen silo on the left hand side. It makes ejecting and using the S Pen more natural to me. And the other thing is that the S Pen now has this matte and rubberized finish. This is a welcome improvement for me, as one of the gripes that I had with the S Pen on my Note 7 and Note 8 was that it was made out of this glossy plastic that is like a magnet for the oils on my hand. And that ultimately made the writing experience slightly uncomfortable at times. But as is, I haven't used the S Pen on this S22 Ultra that much yet to form a full conclusion, but if my past Galaxy Note experience were any indication, the S Pen will be something that I only use occasionally when I'm bored. And another thing I want to touch on is the location of the volume rockers on the side here. This is the first phone that I've used that the volume buttons are next to the power button here. This was especially apparent to me when I'm watching videos on landscape mode and trying to increase the volume with the left edge there, where the buttons are gone and my muscle memory is still thinking, oh, why is it not on the left edge there? I guess this is something that I'll need to wire my mind towards, to think that this side no longer have the volume buttons and only this side has the volume buttons. Moving on to the thing that I'm most impressed with about the S22 Ultra, which is the under-display fingerprint scanner here. This sensor is way better than the one found on my S10 Plus, which didn't work well when my fingers were really dry or slightly wet. And in my opinion, this feels as fast and reliable as the rear-facing capacitive fingerprint sensor that I really enjoyed using on my Note 8. Adding to that, the location of the sensor on the screen is optimal, as it's placed exactly where my thumb would naturally rest when I'm holding the phone. And speaking of the screen, the LTPO display on this S22 Ultra that goes up to 120Hz was something that I was really looking forward to, but it was just okay to me. I think that's because I honestly can't tell the difference between the 120Hz display compared to the 60Hz display on my previous S10 Plus. But one thing that I was able to pick up instantly was the color fidelity on the screen. To my eyes, the colors on this screen looks very punchy or more punchy compared to my S10 Plus, and that makes watching videos an amazing experience on this display here. And one thing that was a pretty obvious change for me also is the vibration motor. On the spec sheet, the S22 Ultra here has this new X-axis vibration motor, and I'm liking it so far. It's not at the level of Apple's industry-leading Taptic engine on the iPhone, but to me this vibration motor here makes vibration a little bit more pronounced. Like in the camera app here, for example, when I click on the shutter button, the vibration makes it feel like I'm actually clicking down on a real shutter button. Hopefully that kind of makes sense here. This is something that you need to try for yourself to fully understand what I'm talking about or whether you will actually like it. Moving on to the software, besides the added S Pen software features, One UI 4.1 on the S22 Ultra feels very familiar and right at home for me. It works well with the good luck customization options that I'm accustomed to, and since this phone is running Android 12, there are several new customization options inherited from Google's Material U. But there is one thing that I was pleasantly surprised to find out, which is the Facebook app that is pre-installed on the phone can now be fully uninstalled. On previous Samsung phones, the best I could do was only to disable the Facebook app. And speaking of apps, I'm really a big fan of the One UI Team Google Messages app that is available for the S22 series. I prefer using the Google Messages app versus the stock Samsung Messages app, mainly due to the fact that it has automatic spam protection and the ability to view messages on my computer through the web app. As for the camera itself, I haven't taken that many photos with it yet to form a full conclusion on it, but the photos I've taken with it so far looks pretty good, and the 10x camera on the back here looks like it's going to be really fun to have. The last thing I want to touch on in this first impressions video is the battery life on this S22 Ultra. Suffice to say, I'm somewhat disappointed with the battery life I got on this device. I was only able to get at most 4.5 hours of screen on time, and I've mostly been using this phone at home with Wi-Fi and only doing things like watching YouTube videos and surfing the web, which don't really take that much battery, so I was expecting better battery endurance given the 5000 mAh battery. But nevertheless, I'll be monitoring the battery performance over the next few weeks, and hopefully I'll have a better story to tell when I do my full review of this phone. But one thing I want to note here is that I've never been able to replicate the 6, 8 or even 10 hours of screen on time that I see other people getting on their Samsung phones. I've always only gotten around 3 hours of screen on time before the battery dies, and I honestly don't know why I can't exceed that threshold there. At the end of the day, the S22 Ultra that I have here in this burgundy color looks and feels great. It does all the basic things like phone calls, browsing the web, and taking photos pretty well, and I'm pretty content with my purchase so far. But yeah, that's it for this video. Let me know down in the comments section what you want to hear more about the S22 Ultra, and I'll address it in my full review coming in the next few weeks. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you very soon in the next video.